They were strictly keeping to their own status. They were sitting somewhere in the waiting room drinking coffee and probably had some conversation with each other.
We see no point in European involvement. They can't help with anything, considering their current attitudes. You just mentioned the head of European diplomacy with her brilliant statements. What help can they offer from such a stance? Hardly any.
Russia's top diplomat has claimed that Europe was effectively sidelined during crucial trilateral talks on Ukraine in Geneva. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov disclosed that European representatives did not directly participate in the negotiations. Instead, Lavrov said, their involvement amounted to little more than a cup of coffee in the hotel lobby. The comments suggest a deliberate exclusion of European powers from high-level discussions shaping the future of Ukraine. The trilateral talks held in Geneva were aimed at addressing key dimensions of the ongoing conflict, yet Europe's diplomatic weight appeared absent from the negotiating table. Lavrov's remarks were reinforced by Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, who openly questioned the value of European participation. Peskov argued that Europe's current stance makes constructive involvement unlikely, stating bluntly that Moscow sees no point in their inclusion. He took direct aim at the European Union's foreign policy leadership, referencing comments by Kaja Kallas and dismissing them as unhelpful.
In what capacity were these representatives from other European nations present in Geneva? What were they doing there?
They were strictly keeping to their own status. They were sitting somewhere in the waiting room drinking coffee and probably had some conversation with each other.
Later, Ukrainians met with them and they briefed them, right, but they weren't at the negotiations. We see no point in European involvement. They can't help with anything, considering their current attitudes. You just mentioned the head of European diplomacy with her brilliant statements. What help can they offer from such a stance? Hardly any.
Kaja Kallas has put forward her demands for Russia. What exactly does she think we should do, in her view? Should we limit our armed forces? And what other things does she believe we should be doing, in the opinion of Kaja Kallas?
I don't believe that the tenure of Ms. Kaja Kallas represents a golden age of diplomacy for the European continent.
You probably had the opportunity, so to speak, to talk with some of the participants in the Geneva negotiations. What are their feelings? What do they say?
Complex operations. The process is very complex. It's a working process. There is something to analyze. There is something to discuss with the head of state. Estonia is very close to us. We do not threaten Estonia nor any other European countries. But if there are nuclear weapons on Estonian territory aimed at us, then our nuclear weapons will be aimed at Estonian territory. And Estonia must clearly understand this. Russia will always do what it must to ensure its own security, especially concerning nuclear deterrence.
Zelensky's interview says to the Estone, he has already stooped to utterly vulgar language. I mean, the things he says and the words he uses, despite still considering himself the country's president.
Let's not pay attention to Zelenskyy. We have our own president, President Putin. He always conducts himself with decency. He never allows himself to use any harsh words towards other heads of state, no matter how much they might deserve such harsh words. And let's still follow our president's example.
A great deal has been accomplished recently. We have practically identified all the participants and the masterminds behind this crime. Well, you know that a number of individuals connected to this have been detained. A female citizen managed to escape, to hide on the territory of Ukraine. This is unequivocally clear. We understand that the masterminds are Ukraine's special services, and behind them stand third countries, which we have spoken about previously, regarding the fact that Ukrainian special services operate under the direct supervision or with the direct involvement of Western, so to speak, special services. We clearly see a British trace first and foremost right here. Therefore, the investigation is currently ongoing. If there is any additional information, we will definitely make sure to publish it.
A question many people are asking is, should we and are we able to behave towards this regime in the same way they behave towards us and carry out some retaliatory special operations?
Well, you know, this question is quite a sensitive one. Yet I wouldn't want to elaborate on this topic. Work is being carried out, and of course, we don't overlook what's happening here with us, and the necessary, so to speak, measures are also being taken there. Well, this is a very delicate question, I want to stress again. So it's probably not expedient to discuss it now. But we are very closely tracking all the things happening. Of course, we will never forget and never forgive.
Ukraine's Donbas region, a price Putin wants in exchange of peace. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy now revealed that US, too, is with Russia on Donbas. In an exclusive interview with AFP, just a day ahead of the 4-year anniversary of Russian invasion, Zelenskyy said both Moscow and Washington insist that Kyiv's withdrawal from Donbas is a condition for ending the ongoing conflict. He confirmed that both the Americans and the Russians say that if you want the war to end tomorrow, get out of Donbas. The Ukrainian leader stressed that Kyiv would not abandon its territory despite mounting pressure, warning that any withdrawal would come at the cost of Ukraine's sovereignty. Zelenskyy further issued a blunt warning. He said Ukraine is not losing the war against Russia. He claimed that the Ukrainian military has taken hundreds of square kilometers in a new counteroffensive and urged Europe to deploy troops right on the front line after any ceasefire. The assessment of the Ukrainian president comes as US President Donald Trump is pushing Kyiv to agree a deal with Moscow.
However, it cannot be truthfully stated that we are losing this war. Honestly, we are definitely not losing it. Absolutely not. The question is whether we will win. Yes, that is a question, but a very, very costly one. Therefore, our proposal is, look, let's hold our ground right where we are. A ceasefire there. Then we move to dialogue. Well, we'll see how it turns out. The Russians are constantly trying to achieve this. A quick peace with a withdrawal from Donbas, that's exactly the Russians' idea. How can they quickly get Donbas without losing any Russian personnel? As a with conclusion to this war, there was precisely our original idea. And today, Trump is certainly strong enough to exert significant pressure on Russia. So what does it generally give to a country that is at war? Nobody wants elections during wartime. Everyone fears destruction, a split in society. But the split will still happen. It will. It's not as if there are 5 people present and they're also incredibly civilized that they wouldn't say a single word to each other, or she to him, or vice versa, just remaining completely silent and doing absolutely nothing at all. They don't quarrel, no, but in the regions they are not taking the appropriate steps. That definitely won't happen. The state during elections is entirely focused on the elections. Russians want, well, let's be honest about it, the Russians simply want to exchange me. Yes, I think that this is a matter for Ukrainians, and ultimately they are quite direct people, very straightforward. They can speak their minds quite openly. They can be very blunt about it.
Zelenskyy's interview followed a new round of Russia-US-Ukraine talks in Geneva. Prior to the negotiations, Moscow said they would revolve around the issue of territory. During the talks on Feb 17th through 18th, Kyiv and Moscow discussed a joint Russian-Ukrainian civilian administration to run a demilitarized zone in the Donbas. Ukrainian officials termed the proposal unrealistic and unacceptable, resulting the recent round of talks again ended in a stalemate. The proposal envisions withdrawing both Russian and Ukrainian troops from part of the Donbas in the country's east and establishing a civilian authority to manage the area. It would be potentially staffed by both Ukrainian and Russian representatives. The status of the Donbas remains the most contentious issue between Kyiv and Moscow. Ukraine maintains that freezing current frontline positions offers the most realistic basis for a ceasefire. But Russia continues to demand that Ukrainian forces withdraw from the region as a precondition for any agreement, a demand that Kyiv has repeatedly rejected. Donbas is situated in eastern Ukraine that Russia has claimed as its own. Russia has insisted that a sustainable settlement will only be possible if Ukraine withdraws from the area still under its control in Donbas, which allegedly voted to join Russia in 2022 in a so-called referendum in the first year of war. Vladimir Putin seeks control of the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine for a mix of strategic, political, economic, and ideological reasons. The Donbas, mainly the Donetsk and Luhansk areas, has been one of the central objectives of Russia since the conflict began. But is taking over Donbas that easy? Earlier, on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference, Zelenskyy cleared that withdrawing from Ukraine's own territory would be a little bit crazy.
I think that they never had another goals than only occupation of Ukraine and minimum what they want, Donbas, the Donetsk region, but 100%. To sell this like a victory to their society, maybe even not to their society. Sometimes we think that to their society, but I think maybe to himself. This is victory for himself. You know, we can't withdraw from our territory or exchange our territory, one piece to another piece of our territory. It's something a little bit crazy. Sorry, and that's why this is not just a land. 200,000 people there, thousands been killed there, especially on this direction, especially on this Donbas. We don't have a lot. We used them some days ago on the territory where they hold Oreshnik. Yes, and we will see the result, but we think that we had the result. So it's extremely important to increase the number. We had technical things, and between us, our one big line of production was destroyed by missiles, by Russian missiles. Now I can speak about it because they relocated and already restarted. So a very difficult question. I mean, I don't know what will be tomorrow. I'm really open for this. We have to fight each day. So our life, each day new life. Each day new life. One goal, how to survive. I'm not thinking about myself because a lot of people, we lost a lot of people. So I'm one of all the people in Ukraine who are in Ukraine, and we fight for this. So I can't think about Vladimir Putin and about his poison ambitions, if he has, I don't know, but he had. And I think I can't think about it, because otherwise I will think only about it. But I don't have time on it. So they attack us with, you see, hundreds of drones and missiles. What is the difference between poison and missile? I don't see the difference. Max. And about Navalny, I don't know. Maybe I think that Russians. I think that he did it, but I don't know what they used for this.